Some people go to the mountains to find peace. Sarah McDonald went to find herself. But what she found instead was a lie. Delores Elaine Hill Productions presents a storybook trailer where the most dangerous secrets are the ones standing right in front of you. In this thrilling novella, Hiding in Plain Sight by Delores Elaine Hill, you will learn how investigative journalist Sarah McDonald retreats to the Adirondack Mountains in upstate New York to heal from a painful betrayal, only to find herself entangled in a dangerous mystery. Watch closely, because the truth is hiding in plain sight. Join us in this thrilling book trailer and a deep dive discussion afterwards on Hiding in Plain Sight, available right now on Amazon. The links are in the description box. The shadows have a way of holding on to the truth, but tonight, we're bringing those secrets into the light. Welcome to an exclusive deep dive production from Delores Elaine Hill's current novella, Hiding in Plain Sight. Available right now on Amazon. The links are in the description box. Stay with us as we go behind the scenes of the mystery that everyone is talking about. Hiding in Plain Sight. The investigation begins now.
Have you ever had like a week so bad or just a life event so heavy that you just wanted to drop everything?
Oh, yeah. Toss the phone in a river.
Exactly. Toss the phone in a river, disappear into a cabin in the woods, and just be done with it all.
Right. I mean, we all harbor this fantasy of what they call the geographical cure.
Yeah, the geographical cure. The whole idea that if we just put enough miles between ourselves and our problems, well, the silence of some remote location is going to act as a reset button for our brains.
Which is usually a total myth, by the way.
Oh, absolutely a myth. And our mission for today's deep dive is going to completely dismantle that exact fantasy for you. We are unpacking a genuinely masterfully constructed short thriller novel. It was published in May 2025 by Delores Elaine Hill.
Right. Hiding in Plain Sight.
Yes, Hiding in Plain Sight. And it is quite a ride.
It really is a remarkable piece of fiction, specifically because it takes direct aim at that very modern, very comforting trope of, retreating to nature to heal.
Right.
Hill systematically deconstructs this idea of the peaceful reset, and she turns it into this chilling psychological pressure cooker.
Pressure cooker is definitely the right word for it.
Yeah, so we're going to look closely at the architectural mechanics of suspense that she uses. We'll analyze how she manipulates both her protagonist and, honestly, us as the reader.
Oh, she definitely manipulates the reader.
She really does, all to prove a very unsettling point, that the baggage we try to outrun has a profound, terrifying way of beating us to our destination.
Okay, let's unpack this, because to understand the trap the author sets, we really have to understand the specific emotional state of our protagonist, Sarah McDonald.
Right, because her mindset is everything here.
Exactly. So Sarah is an investigative journalist living in New York City, and her reality has just been completely shattered. She discovers her fiancé, Scott, has been carrying on this long-term affair.
And not just a normal affair, if you can call it that.
No, the crucial detail here, and this is like the thematic seed for the entire novel, is that Scott wasn't sneaking off to seedy motels or anything.
Right.
He was conducting this affair out in the open. It was hidden in plain sight.
Yeah, which is just devastating.
So in response to this, Sarah just flees. She leaves the gridlock of the city for the isolated, freezing tranquility of a family cabin in the Adirondack Mountains. It's up near Blue Mountain Lake.
But the thing is, Hill doesn't give Sarah a single moment to breathe.
Not one.
Like, the environment instantly rejects her. The author's use of the environment as the primary antagonist right out of the gate is a brilliant subversion of that cozy winter cabin trope.
Oh yeah, there's no hot cocoa and fuzzy blankets here.
Exactly. Hill doesn't describe the snow as, like, a beautiful white blanket. She weaponizes the weather.
She really does.
Sarah's driving directly into a severe, blinding snowstorm. And the prose itself actually becomes claustrophobic. You read it, and you feel trapped.
Yeah, the radio is just broadcasting these relentless warnings, right? Saying travel is not advised, detailing temperatures plummeting well below zero.
Right. By making the environment so hostile and deadly, Hill is establishing a physical reflection of Sarah's internal state.
Oh, that's a great point.
The freezing temperatures out there completely mirror her emotional paralysis on the inside.
I always think of, well, running away to the woods to clear your head, it's kind of like putting a really beautiful rug over a deeply stained floor.
That is a perfect analogy.
Right. The mess is still fundamentally there. You are just choosing not to look at it for a while. And the isolation that Sarah thinks is going to protect her actually just strips away her systemic defenses.
It strips away everything.
Think about it. If she were in Manhattan and felt threatened, she has the infrastructure of the city. She has neighbors on the other side of drywall, police precincts on the corner, solid cell service.
And in the Adirondacks, all of that infrastructure is replaced by just miles and miles of frozen pine trees.
Just frozen trees and silence.
And that structural vulnerability is exactly what sets the stage for the inciting incident.
Oh, the firewood scene.
Yes. Hill waits until Sarah is attempting to perform this really grounding, mundane task. She's just out gathering firewood the next morning to, shatter the silence.
Gunshots.
Exactly. Gunshots ring out through the trees. Sarah flees into the cabin, and then moments later, there is a frantic knock at the door.
Just reading that part made my heart race.
Right. It's a man in hunting gear, and he's clutching a bleeding arm.
Yeah.
He introduces himself as Tom Reynolds, says he's the town veterinarian, claims he had a hunting accident, and desperately needs to use her landline.
This scene is just a masterclass in hijacking human instinct.
It really is.
The author puts Sarah in this agonizing position. She has a literal stranger bleeding on her porch immediately following nearby gunfire. This isn't just a basic plot device, it's a profound test of the social contract.
Oh, for sure.
Sarah has to weigh her baseline primal survival instincts against her conditioned human empathy. Like, do I help this bleeding man or do I lock the door and save myself?
And what's fascinating here is the psychological mechanism of compliance that Hill is exploiting.
Say more about that.
Well, in psychology, there's a whole concept regarding how predators or manipulators bypass our defenses by presenting themselves as the party in need of rescue.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Right. So by appearing helpless and actively bleeding, Tom neutralizes Sarah's threat assessment. Her empathy completely overrides her caution.
She lets him in.
She lets him in. He makes his call, and he leaves. But the boundary of her sanctuary has now been permanently breached.
The seal is broken.
Yeah.
And the breach expands literally the very next day. Tom returns to look for a phone he supposedly lost in the snow, and he uses the opportunity to ask Sarah out to dinner as a thank you. Naturally. And they end up at this local spot, and Tom is, well, he plays the role of the charming, slightly damaged local guy.
He's very good at it.
Very good. He admits he also moved to this isolated town to escape a bad relationship and a, quote, worse ending back in Colorado.
Right. And during this dinner, Hill expands the cast, right?
Yeah.
We meet the locals.
Yes, we meet June, who is this seemingly harmless neighbor, and then we meet Martha, Tom's veterinary assistant. And Martha is just a stark contrast to that small-town warmth. She is intensely guarded, and she delivers this remarkably cold warning to Sarah.
I remember this.
She just looks at her and says, "Storms bring more than snow."
It's such a chilling line. And notice how Hill shifts the narrative tension right here.
Yeah, how so?
The thread transitions from a physical survival scenario, the freezing cold, the bleeding stranger, into a much more complex psychological maze. The author strips away the jump scares entirely.
There are no monsters jumping out of the closet.
Exactly. Instead, the suspense is engineered through the friction of uncomfortable social interactions.
Yeah, that tension.
We, along with Sarah, are forced to navigate the space between what people are saying out loud and the visceral, unsettling gut feelings that Sarah is trying so desperately to suppress.
I have to admit, I really struggled with Sarah's choices in this section.
A lot of readers do.
As a reader, I was just mentally shouting at the page. I mean, she is a highly trained New York City investigative journalist. Her entire career is built on reading people, detecting lies, and trusting her instincts.
Yep.
Yet she actively ignores massive internal alarms to go on a date with a man who emerged from the woods bleeding, whose assistant is radiating overt hostility. It felt honestly, initially, like the author was just dumbing down the protagonist to advance the plot.
It's a very common reaction to have when analyzing thriller protagonists.
Yeah.
But if we look at the clinical psychology of heartbreak, Sarah's blindness is actually highly calculated by the author.
Okay, break that down for us.
Sarah has just endured a profound betrayal by her fiancé. When the person you trust most in the world successfully deceives you for years, and in plain sight, remember, it doesn't just break your heart.
Right.
It completely shatters your trust in your own cognitive perception. You literally start to doubt your ability to judge reality.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, Sarah is desperate for validation and distraction. Tom provides an anchor in that storm. Hill uses that deep, emotional vulnerability to create very realistic blind spots. Sarah wants Tom to be safe because she desperately needs the world to feel safe again.
Oh, wow. Okay, that reframes the entire interaction for me.
Right.
She isn't acting out of foolishness. She's acting out of a trauma response. She is overcorrecting. And Hill uses the specific sociology of a small town to amplify that disorientation.
Because small towns have their own rules.
Exactly. In a massive city, anonymity is the baseline. You don't expect to know your barista's life story. But in a place like Blue Mountain Lake, the social currency is familiarity.
Everyone smiles, everyone waves.
But underneath that veneer of neighborliness is this bedrock of closely guarded secrets. It leaves Sarah constantly questioning her own sanity. Like, she keeps wondering, is she being overly paranoid because of her recent trauma? Or is she the only person clearly seeing the dysfunction?
And the genius of Hill's pacing is how she slowly allows the fog of that trauma to lift. It gives way to Sarah's professional training.
Yes, the journalist wakes up.
Exactly. The transition from passive paranoia to active investigation begins with a really highly specific trigger. Sarah is at the local general store, which is an environment designed for idle chatter, right?
Oh, the gossip hub of any small town.
Right. And she overhears locals discussing a recent break-in at an empty cabin. And during the conversation, they casually mention how Martha, the new vet's assistant, gives everyone, quote, the chills.
The chills, just that little phrase.
Just that minor validation from a third party is the spark. It validates Sarah's gut feeling. She's not crazy.
And here's where it gets really interesting. The prose actually shifts rhythm here.
It totally changes pace.
The long atmospheric descriptions of the snowy woods just disappear, and they are replaced by sharp, sequential actions. Sarah retreats to her cabin, boots up an old news database she uses for journalism, and begins cross-referencing the tiny, seemingly insignificant breadcrumbs Tom casually dropped at dinner.
It's so satisfying to watch.
It is. She plugs in search parameters. Veterinary office vandalism plus Colorado plus mental health arrest.
The utilization of that database is a brilliant mechanism for reclaiming agency. Sarah isn't waiting for the villain to reveal themselves anymore. She is actively tearing down the facade.
Taking matters into her own hands.
Right. And the search results yield an article about a woman named Margaret L. Corwin. The article details how Margaret systematically destroyed Dr. Thomas Reynolds' clinic following a bitter breakup, and that led to her institutionalization.
And attached to the file is a photograph.
Yes.
Margaret Corwin is Martha. The woman serving coffee at the local vet clinic is the woman who obliterated Tom's life in Colorado. And at this precise moment, the power dynamic of the novel completely inverts.
Really flips.
Sarah ceases to be the wounded bird hiding in a cabin. She is back in her element, utilizing her professional skill set to dissect a massive, terrifying deception.
We really need to analyze the specific type of terror Margaret represents, too.
Because it's not normal stalking.
No, she didn't merely falsify a resume or, move to the same state. She engaged in a surgical reconstruction of her identity to embed herself directly into Tom's new reality.
That's terrifying.
Right. She didn't stalk him from the bushes. She stalked him by becoming indispensable to his daily routine. She hid in plain sight.
The title drop.
There it is. Furthermore, Hill employs this terrifying narrative pivot. The moment Sarah uncovers the truth, Margaret realizes the deception has been compromised. The investigator simultaneously becomes the prey.
And Hill shatters the physical safety of the cabin using digital intrusion.
Those text messages.
Yes. Sarah begins receiving these anonymous, vanishing text messages. The first one just simply reads, "You're asking the wrong question, Sarah." And then it disappears from her screen after 5 seconds.
So creepy.
Later, another one arrives. "You're getting too close." It forces the tension out of the realm of intellectual discovery. The barrier between the investigator and the subject just evaporates.
It's gone.
The mask Margaret is wearing begins to slip, accelerating the plot right toward a physical confrontation.
It is the point of no return for the narrative structure. The psychological pressure cooker we discussed earlier, it just can no longer contain the escalating stakes. Sarah possesses the truth, and Margaret possesses the knowledge that her entire fabricated reality is crumbling.
Which leads directly to Sarah just marching down to the clinic and confronting Tom.
Just lays it all out.
Lays out the entire dossier. The fake identity, the history of vandalism in Colorado, the reality that his quiet, efficient assistant is actually his deeply dangerous ex-fiancé. And Tom is visibly shattered by the revelation.
Completely blindsided.
But the true escalation happens the following morning. Tom's clinic is closed, his vehicle is missing, and Sarah receives one final chilling text message. "You shouldn't have told him.
which forces Sarah to make a really critical decision regarding reliance on authority.
Right, she goes to the police.
She approaches the local law enforcement, Sheriff Fry, but Hill writes Fry not as, incompetent, but as rigidly bound by procedure.
He's slow.
He is slow. He's skeptical of the city journalist, and he insists on a methodical check of the clinic first. But Sarah knows they are operating on a severe time deficit. She is aware that Margaret has access to this isolated, defunct cottage out by the lake.
Which poses a really fascinating question about character evolution for the reader.
Oh, definitely.
Instead of waiting for the bureaucratic wheels of the local police to turn or accompanying them to what she knows is the wrong location, Sarah drives to that remote cottage entirely alone.
Yep.
As a reader, you are torn between viewing this as an act of immense bravery or an act of sheer suicidal recklessness.
I mean, it is undeniably reckless,
Sure.
but it is the necessary culmination of her character arc.
Why necessary, though?
Because from a psychological standpoint, Sarah is refusing to inhabit the role of the passive victim anymore. She had her agency stripped away by her fiancé's deception back in New York.
Yeah.
She is fundamentally unwilling to surrender her agency again to a slow-moving sheriff or a sociopathic stalker.
She's taking ownership of the narrative.
Exactly.
So she approaches the cottage, and through a frost-covered window, she witnesses the terrifying reality of Margaret's instability. Tom is literally bound to a chair.
Yeah.
Margaret is pacing the floorboards, completely untethered from her Martha persona. She is ranting at Tom, stating, "I was doing fine," until she started digging.
So chilling.
Sarah makes the choice to breach the room. She attempts a verbal de-escalation, telling Margaret the police are already involved and it's over. But Margaret bypasses reason entirely and lunges.
She just snaps.
Hill delivers this brutal, visceral, physical struggle. Chairs splintering, desperate grapples for leverage. It's only halted when Sheriff Fry finally breaches the door.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, many thrillers would use that physical rescue as the climax and just roll the credits.
Right, the bad guy's caught, everybody is safe.
But Hill understands that a physical struggle doesn't resolve psychological terror. The true thematic resolution of the novel, the moment the thesis is finally proven, occurs later, within the structured, sterile environment of a courtroom.
The trial scene is arguably the most disturbing part of the entire book.
Oh, it is meticulously designed to be. Margaret is ultimately sentenced to a minimum of 20 years in a high-security psychiatric facility.
Right.
And throughout the trial, she has maintained the quiet, polite demeanor of Martha the vet tech. But the moment the sentence is formalized, that societal mask disintegrates completely.
It just falls off.
She physically lunges toward the judge's bench, screaming, "You think it's over? It's never over."
It fundamentally attacks our reliance on order. We believe that courtrooms, gavels, and prison sentences represent a definitive end to chaos. But Margaret's reaction proves that the chaos was merely wearing a polite outfit.
Precisely. Hill uses that courtroom explosion to validate the core terror she has been building from page one. True danger rarely announces itself with, a cinematic musical sting or from a dark alleyway.
No, it doesn't.
It quietly and efficiently integrates itself into the mundane machinery of your daily routine. It pours your morning coffee, it files your tax returns, it holds the leash of your dog at the local clinic.
Which brings us to the haunting final pages of Sarah's journey. Following the trial, Sarah returns to the cabin. She opens her reporter's notebook, finally returning to the tools of her trade, and she writes a final entry.
I love this quote.
She observes, "Some monsters don't hide in the shadows. They hide in plain sight. And sometimes, the truth doesn't set you free. It just makes you stronger."
That is a phenomenal subversion of a very tired cliche.
The truth setting you free.
Yeah, we are constantly told that the truth will set us free, implying that truth brings peace. In this narrative, the truth did not bring peace. It brought extreme violence, and it shattered the illusion of safety.
Yeah, it really did.
However, it restored Sarah's internal compass. She survived not because she ran away, but because she finally stopped ignoring the ugly reality right in front of her.
So what does this all mean? For you listening, Hill's novel is a direct challenge to audit your own environment. What implicit assumptions do you make every single day about the polite, unremarkable strangers you interact with?
The person handing you your dry cleaning, your coworker sitting 2 desks down, or, the local veterinarian.
Right. We operate on a vast, unspoken social contract, assuming we know people based entirely on the specific context we find them in. But as this deep dive proves, context can be a highly sophisticated, entirely manufactured weapon.
It is a profoundly sobering thought experiment. We are required to rely on those social contracts simply to function in a civilized society. But hiding in plain sight serves as a stark reminder of just how fragile and honestly easily manipulated those contracts truly are.
It leaves an indelible mark on how you view your surroundings. And as we wrap up today, I want to leave you with one final lingering thought to chew on.
Yeah.
At the very end of the novel, in the aftermath of the trial, Sarah makes a surprising decision. She chooses not to return to her old life in New York City.
Which is huge.
Instead, she decides to remain in Blue Mountain Lake, quote, for a while. She stands on the porch, looking out at the frozen woods, and Hill writes, for the first time in a long time, the silence was peaceful.
But is it?
Right, we have to question the nature of that peace. Has Sarah truly healed from the compounding trauma of her fiancé's betrayal and Margaret's violence? Or has she simply traded the emotional hypervigilance required to navigate a toxic, deceptive relationship in a crowded city for the literal survivalist hypervigilance of living utterly alone in the woods, where she now has empirical proof that monsters actually exist?
That's a great question.
Think about the quality of that silence the next time you dream of running away to a cabin.